Hello everybody and welcome to the Alien vs Predator Galaxy YouTube channel. This is Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks.
And this is Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop.
And we're back for another motion tracker video, talking about some more Aliens Fireteam content. Well, the coverage that IGN has been given them. And this week we are talking about their lore article. I say this week. Well, yeah, we're not. This was Tuesdays?
Yeah, so it is this week.
Yeah, this week. And as of recording today, they also did a little summary preview hands-on thing, which we'll talk about at the end. But there wasn't really much in that one that we didn't already know. Just a nice new confirmation of something I think we'd been suspecting, but hadn't been confirmed up until now. But yeah, so we are going to be looking at their first article from this week, which was a bit of a lore dump kind of thing. Quite a few little bits. I say little, quite a few bits in this one actually. So, Adam, do you want to start us off with the first stuff?
Sure. If you're interested in lore and how Aliens Fireteam's story intersects with the rest of the series, IGN spoke to Cold Iron's head of studio Craig Zinkovich, as well as creative designer Matt Hyson and narrative designer Chris Leitwall. Quote, Aliens Fireteam is a cooperative shooter, but it's here to tell a new story too, and there's a cohesive narrative spread across its campaigns, Zinkovich explained. Quote, colonization has exploded. There's a lot of new developments. Your battalion is sent out to patrol the lawless frontier that exists out there. On your way, your ship picks up a distress call from LV-895. You can probably guess what happens next. We'll give you a hint. It involves xenomorphs and pulse rifles. But let's back up a second. Aliens Fireteam takes place in the year 2202, 23 years after the events of Aliens and Alien 3. Narrative designer Chris Leitwall gave us a crash course in future history. One of the major events in our backstory is the passing of the Colonial Protection Act in 2187. That is a government reaction to what the companies were doing in the Outer Rim in the frontier. Basically saying corporations have been running roughshod over everything out there, causing a lot of people misery. We're going to take a more active hand in this. You, the player, will be one of the Colonial Marines enlisting for this cause.
So that's actually a sort of interesting reversal from the way it's handled in Aliens, because, you know, it was a after-the-fact, reactive, guys, we've lost touch with one of our colonies that we co-finance, we come and give us a hand. Where this one's now, the Marines are out there making sure that all those colonies on the edge of explored space, away from governmental eyes, where the company's poking and prodding people and doing some dodgy experiments and trying to curtail that. So that's an interesting thing, because a lot of the lore tends to really depict them as hand in hand in, you know, the evilry that goes on in the Alien universe. So to see them, I mean, I know you haven't read it yet, but for those that have, they will know, you know, like with Into Charybdis and the way the Marines are portrayed in that. So to see them be a bit more traditional heroic in intent here is interesting.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how far they're going to go with the political, you know, state of the galaxy in this, in terms of the Three World Empire and the United Americas. And Wayland is closer to the Three World Empire, like that's where they're based, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that later in this one. That's this article,
right?
Yeah, but it kind of makes me wonder. I mean, I never really got into Left 4 Dead, and like the other article from today from IGN, you know, compares the narrative style to that. So was it really much narrative going off?
Yeah, it was really interesting how they weaved the narrative through the co-op gameplay in that. Like, there weren't really many cutscenes with that, but you definitely had a sense of what you were doing and what was happening. You got hints of what was going on in the wider situation. So something like that, I think, would fit this style of game really well. I loved both Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, and I still recommend you check those out, Aaron. They are great games, some of the best zombie games ever, really. Speaking of Left 4 Dead, some of the developers of the original games are working on a new game called Back 4 Blood, which was just delayed from summer to October. And it's always, well, it's mostly good when games get delayed because obviously they get extra time to work on that. But it's good for us as well because these are two similar types of games that I think having some space between them will be good for Fireteam.
And, well, talking about things that would probably set them apart as well, the next part of the article talks about the customization. So it's a co-op survival shooter, but it's pretty heavily bent towards RPGs, Inkovich tells us. That's where a lot of Cold Iron's team comes from. You're not playing a preset person. We're trying to make it so you inhabit the world itself. In space, no one can enforce your dress code, so expect plenty of customization. You'll be able to wear your cowboy hat or your classic colonial marine helmet. And I know that's been the thing that people, at least on our boards, have been talking about is, do we get headwear? Yes, we get headwear. And more interestingly for me here is awesome synth sunglasses. I hope to God that means Bishop's funky cyber sunglasses from the Canon figure of Bishop. I really, really hope that is what it is. And I think they talk about it again later on in the article, but they talk about mining Canon at some point. So it's Hyson, Matt, that tells us this bit. So Matt, it best be Bishop's headwear, please. So and here he's talking about the amount of guns and stuff that we know we've heard about in the game. It's funny that they talked about the RPG bent up here because that's the RPG UI elements are something that I'm not keen on. So very, very deliberate from the sound.
Well, that might have been where those original rumors of this being like a Destiny style game came from, because Destiny is like an RPG shooter pretty much.
Well, remember the description back then was persistent online shooter as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not a well-known genre term, I don't think.
No.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it to describe this kind of gameplay, this kind of setup. Sorry, but yeah, I'm not going to talk about that bit. We know about that bit, but here's some more of the lore dump around the weaponry. So some of which Adam's alluded to already.
In addition to Armat Battle Systems and Weyland-Yutani, who supply much of the arsenal seen in James Cameron's film, there's also Hyperdyne Systems, the company responsible for creating Ash and Bishop. Quote, in our timeline, they have a weapons manufacturing arm that provides guns to whoever's going to buy it, including colonist corporations and the UACM. Definitely buys their stuff because it's a little more experimental. And as a game, it lets us branch out a little from what was seen in Aliens. The granular details of who makes which weapon loops back into the larger narrative, as each company has its allegiances. Armat Battle Systems is the primary supplier of the United Americas. Weyland-Yutani is in cahoots with the Anglo-Japanese Three-World Empire. Meanwhile, Hyperdyne is more popular with a third faction, the Union of Progressive Peoples. It's unclear quite what their role will be, but if you're familiar with William Gibson's...
I don't think you need to talk about this bit.
But it is interesting how the UPP is starting to branch out in lore a bit more, and I think a lot of that was owed to the RPG.
Well, and the adaptations, like it was about to go into. It doesn't seem like we're going to see them in the game, which I think is a little disappointing.
I don't think we will, yeah.
I would have liked that, especially... I think because it's the game's point is about Weyland-Yutani anyway. So yeah, but I mean, in the future, if they do further content, and I hope they do, I would like to see the UPP show up more. But I don't like their take on Hyperdyne.
No,
because I mean, my interpretation was that it was one of those owned by Weyland-Yutani kind of things, or they had some really heavy hand in it because, if they manufactured Ash and Bishop and they were such vital parts of it, and then, the designer of Bishop ends up working for Weyland-Yutani, it felt like they were a subsidiary of Weyland. So for them to, in terms of Fireteam, be interpreted as having manufacturing arms that would just sell to anybody, including political enemies. I'm not too keen on that element, I've got to say. I feel like that should have been a pick another name kind of thing. Or, go stereotypical and go whoever makes the AKs, the Kalashnikovs kind of thing. So nothing much with this one. This is just saying that Infiltrator's coming out. That'll be out in a couple of months. I think that's aiming for April.
Yeah,
I think.
Sure.
Although knowing the state of how it's going, I won't get that until about June, July time. Charybdis is still not out in the UK. Keeps getting pushed back and pushed back.
You guys are getting quite a few delays over there.
I've ended up buying a second autographed copy, so I can just read that instead because that was in stock. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that, to seeing how that one turns out. So, talking about Weyland-Yutani, a prevailing theme throughout the series is no matter how bad the aliens might seem, the humans turn out to be even worse. In the future of the timeline, it's gotten to a critical mass. It's widely known that Weyland-Yutani is the bad guy, Zinkovich tells us. It's pretty easy for us to start right off the bat with everybody knowing if Weyland-Yutani is involved, something bad is happening here. While yes, you will get to shoot the Xenomorphs with pulse rifles, that's not the only enemy type. Zinkovich continues, there are over 20 different enemy types, all with different AIs and behavior. A bunch of different Xenomorphs, but you will be fighting synthetics as well. You go up against Weyland-Yutani's militia security forces, and they're using synths as their main fighting force, at least where you encounter them in the frontier. Now, that is these guys that we saw in the trailer. How do you feel about
that? It's interesting. They kind of have a working Joe look about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have the plain white faces, and they did have those in AVP 2010 as well, although they had those really cool, like, skull-type faces.
They were modeled more on the dog catchers or the commandos from the end of Alien 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just hoping they don't overdo it, because that was one of the primary complaints of Aliens Colonial Marines, was you were fighting Weyland-Yutani mercenaries way too much at the expense of fighting aliens. So yes, I do think fighting another human force can be good, just to switch things up so you're not just overwhelmed with the aliens all the time. But I do think they should be like a secondary thing you run into, not like something that's you run into them just as much as the aliens.
And I'm ready for the engineer battles as well. I know Adam isn't, but I would quite happily see them in there. And some stuff we already know about here in terms of the varying Xenomorphs that we're going to be getting in. But what's interesting is this bit here. The Xenomorph is a very adaptable organism within the Aliens universe, and the same is true as a game mechanic. Zinkovich elaborated, we got to pour in over all the extended universe things, the toys, the comics, the novels, and kind of picked and chose which would be an amazing creature to fight. Or if we needed a new game mechanic, is there a creature someplace we could use, or do we have to make something new? The Xenomorph's DNA reflex causes its adult form to take on attributes of the host organism it birthed from. And Letoir, no, what did we decide his pronunciation was? I'm not snipping it. I'm apologizing. I'm terrible with names.
Letoir.
I really am. Letoir hints that Fireteam's menagerie of enemies will explore this further. Some of the Xenos in our game you'll see have the abilities that haven't been seen elsewhere because they're from life forms local to the star system that the game takes place in. Now, this really pleases me because for the longest time, the DNA reflex wasn't taken advantage of enough, in my opinion. The biggest example of it for the longest time has been the Pred Alien. So last couple of years, that's made a pretty big comeback. We had the Lion Worm hybrid in Echo, a brief little mention of pig aliens in Dust to Dust, And then that whole thing with perhaps it taking on...
I wanted to see those designer peg aliens.
Yeah,
Never
it would
got
have
to
been
see
funny.
them. They were just mentioned.
Then you had the whole thing of the alien perhaps being influenced by its host, you know, in terms of the mother stuff. So to actually see the games come in and finally take advantage of it, because it's like they're saying here, you know, it can help them fulfill game mechanic types. Although what I'm not necessarily sure I agree on the haven't seen before, because I think most of what we've got kind of feels like it was a Colonial Marines also took advantage of that. Maybe not in terms of the DNA reflex. I think their excuse was mutations from genetic fallout of the atmosphere process, and not that you'd know that by playing the game. That was one of the things they talked about behind the scenes. So it kind of makes me curious as to what other stuff, you know, which of the other alien variants we haven't seen yet. You got any thoughts on that one?
Well, if you scroll down a bit more, I believe there was another thing in the article that was kind of interesting, where they talk about, I know we were wondering, like, where are all these runner aliens coming from? And they talk about this facility that you're going to was a research base for Weyland-Yutani, where they were specifically experimenting with the...
That's the book. That's the book.
Oh, that's from the book. Okay.
Yeah.
So was that a recent synopsis of the book?
No, they mention it in this article.
Oh, okay. So I did see it in this article.
Yeah, but it's referenced in the book rather than the game, because I don't think the refinery is the same place that the book takes place in. I don't know how, we don't know how they relate yet.
Yeah, but hopefully the book will give us a sense of the type of world we can expect in the game, and the whole setup of how all these aliens were, I guess, unleashed or escaped.
And they talk about Kenner specifically here as well. As any Alien fan who grew up in the 90s can attest, this was explored by the batshit insane, sometimes somewhat literally. I don't think there was a bat one, but there was a flying queen. Designs of the Kenner's action figure. We asked if any of those beloved childhood monstrosities would rear their ugly heads.
What happens when you click literally? It's the flying queen alien. Yeah.
There's definitely stuff we pulled from, things we updated, or what we've seen in what we've been inspired by. Mostly these toys prove the strength of the IP. So, I mean, nothing is directly a adaptation that we've seen so far, anyway, an adaptation of one of the Kenner figures, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to seeing that bull or cougar alien.
I do. Well, the what do they call it? The jumper, but then they changed the name to the Prowler, right?
Yeah.
The one that was red. Yeah, that kind of reminded me of the cougar one. I am curious to see if there will be a flying one at all, because I know that arcade game Extermination had like the alien dragon, they called it.
And yeah, we don't talk about Armageddon though. We don't talk about Armageddon.
I didn't bring up Armageddon. I was saying Extermination. Armageddon was fun though.
No, Armageddon was the insane one. I think Exterminations was still insane, but a little bit more subdued. I liked Extermination. And so this bit's just saying that we're not going back to any movie locations, although there'll be inspiration from them, a la the way Isolation did it. But I will let you do this bit, Mr. Zeller.
No, I can't imagine why. As divisive as they might be among fans, Ridley Scott's recent additions to the Alien universe are also part of the canon. Quote, there are things that happen in Prometheus and Alien Covenant that do show up in the game as well, Zinkovich tells us. Quote, I think we're planning on talking about those later, but we are pulling Prometheus and Covenant into the future of the timeline. Maybe we'll run into some relics from the engineers or zap some neomorphs or deacons in addition to xenomorphs. Just don't expect an android who looks like Michael Fassbender to show up and give flute lessons with a rhythm-based minigame. No, seriously, we asked.
So, I mean, we've seen the iris, the bladed iris door, and we've seen some very rocky, natural kind of ruins that evoke the rocky aesthetic that Prometheus and Covenant seem to take, more so Covenant probably. So I think we're pretty safe to say that it is going to be an engineer facility.
Yeah.
I would like to see engineers.
Well, you can actually, if you go to their website, one of the backgrounds is an engineer facility. So
I would like to see engineers show up in this. I would like to see Xenomorph show up in this, as much as Adam probably wouldn't, but I really would. So I say bring it on. And the next bit's just saying that there's going to be no predators in the game. Although if you really want, you can cosplay as a predator, because one of the classes, I think is it the gunner, has the pop-up shoulder missile launcher.
That's pretty cool.
I wonder if that was intentional. I don't think it was, but I wonder. And that's basically the article. So a good few little drops of lore stuff and explanation of what they're doing. And I said I was going to bring it up because it peed me off. But so we've been poking fun at IGN's continued coverage and exclusivity of stuff to do with Alien over the last couple of years. They got all the isolation stuff, and they've had this month of stuff to do with this, and we've been poking fun at it, especially the fact that the guy doing most of it was the one that trashed Alien Isolation. So you know what he thought would be a good idea in some of his coverage for this new game he's supposed to be promoting? He reminded everybody he was that guy that trashed Isolation, as opposed to the majority of everybody else who loves it, with his little comment in his preview saying that
he said Colonial Marines burned people and Alien Isolation overstayed its welcome.
What a crock of crap. What I mean, I'd always been playing, it was just a little bit of friendly bants. But no, get fucked, Ryan. That's ridiculous. There's a reason why all Alien fans tend to poke fun at you for this. And I think it's super detrimental that he's done this, because some of the top comments now on their latest video are basically telling him to go do himself. So
I mean, yeah, if you go to Metacritic and you look at Alien Isolation, they're both in the 80s, the critic score and the user score, and IGN is at the very bottom of the professional critic reviews. If you search greatest survival horror games of all time, multiple sources like Digital Trends, Collider, PC Gamer have all listed it right up there in the top 10 best horror games of all time. So I mean, I'm not saying reviews need to be universal. People do get angry when you have a lot of reviews that are positive, and then you have a negative one. It happened with the original Dead Space. I think it was the official Xbox magazine gave Dead Space a 5 or something like that, where all other outlets gave it pretty high praises. So naturally, not everyone's gonna agree on things, but read the room, dude. If you're not if your opinion is going to be that against the grain, maybe don't remind us. But
yeah, thanks for calling attention away from the new game that we're looking forward to, and you're supposed to be shining a light on, and make your top comments about how you were that guy. Thank you, Ryan. Anyway, I just didn't want to mention it at the start of the episode. But no, I'm still really looking forward to this one. All the stuff we've been getting is pretty interesting. A little bits I might not necessarily agree with or kind of about, but in general, yeah, I think it looks fun.
It's funny. He also referred to it as Ridley's Alien verse in the video, and I'm like, this is James Cameron's Aliens that the game is obviously going for here. But anyway.
Anyway, I did try and put us back on a more positive Fireteam related note, but Adam stayed us back there. So you can.
I just wanted to make sure we covered everything. But
how are you feeling about Fireteam after this month?
It's looking great, honestly. I'm really excited. Oh, we forgot to talk about the hub. So
yes. So that was pretty much the one new piece of information from today's thing, was that in between missions or campaigns, whatever the terminology is they're using, the USS Endeavour the marine ships. It was just like a little hub port, which I think was something we were all expecting. I think that was from some of the early 4chan leaks last year or the year before. So it's been one of those things we've been waiting for to be announced, and we've got confirmation of here. And it'll be interesting to see how that works, because they talked about it having NPC players that you could interact with. So I kind of wonder if there's some dynamicness there in terms of pushing the narrative forward.
Well, they tried this sort of thing in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. They had this big encampment where you would actually run into other players and other groups, and if you wanted to, you could decide to group up with people you met in the hub area. So I wonder if this will be akin to that, where we can actually run into other teams or other people who are maybe looking to play. That would kind of be an interesting feature.
Probably not as expansive though, given the 3-player nature of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ghost Recon Breakpoint was only 4 players, but you would still run into other groups there and other individual players there.
Fair enough. I do hope we get to explore the ship, because I really liked what Gearbox or Timegate or whoever did it, their expansions of the Sulaco with Sid Mead's kind of.
You think it'll be a Bougainville? That would be cool.
Yeah, or a Conestoga.
Hey, it's 20 years later. It should be a Bougainville.
I know, but if they dived into that, and that's more of an AVP thing rather than an aliens thing.
It was originally in the Colonial Marines Technical Manual.
Okay,
that was its first appearance.
Okay,
the first time we saw it was in AVP 2010.
Well, we'll see. We'll find out soon, I guess. But no, I do hope we get to explore around it a fair bit more than just like a briefing room or the lockers or something.
That would be cool, and it would be nice if they somehow explain, like, "Hey, we're only sending teams of 3 out. Good luck, guys."
Yeah, everybody else is still in cryo. There's an accident where we haven't got enough power to unlock everybody. Anyway. Let us know how you guys and girls out there are feeling about all the new news that's been coming out. Has your opinion changed at all? Are you looking forward to it more after the coverage or less? Sound up in the comment section below and let us know. This has been Corporal Hicks
and RidgeTop.
Thank you for watching.